Hello to all my friends and family, and welcome to Jim's 5am Club. I'm down here by Circular Quay in this beautiful garden. It's just so peaceful to come out here and be in the CBD and be surrounded by a little bit of greenery, just to take us out of that concrete jungle and allow us to just relieve our senses and to enjoy the moment and the morning. So what we'll do is we'll go on a walk and talk. As I said, I'm on my smoko, my morning tea break. I've got half an hour. So what I'll do is I'll dedicate 15 minutes or so to a book summary. And we're just powering through these book summaries at the moment. And to think that with the technology and the energy flow that I have at the moment, I'm delivering more book summaries or more books in a summarized format than what most people would ever read in a lifetime. On average, I do about 4 or 5 book summaries a day, and the reality of life is that most people wouldn't get through 4 or 5 books in an entire lifetime. And dare I say, the newer generations, the younger generations, may never get through a book ever, which is sad. But one of my missions on Jim's 5am Club is to open up people's minds, open up people's horizons, and enable people through technology to come into contact with a lot of the wonderful OPE, other people's experience that has been captured, detailed in books and summarised, and for me to be able to couple up those messages with the beautiful sights of this magnificent city of Sydney, and to couple it up with a message with a few lessons and a few learnings, hopefully, for us to at least think about and in some cases incorporate in our daily routines. As you can see, it's another overcast. It's another overcast Sydney day with cloud cover. It was raining all morning, but it does look like that sun may be trying to come through those clouds. But it's wonderful. They're wonderful conditions for vlogging. Just a gentle breeze. It's cool, not too hot. But let's get on with this book summary so that I can get back to work. So the book that I'm going to go through today is entitled The Rise, and it's by an author named Sarah Lewis. And she kicks off the book with a quote, an interesting quote, and the quote is, "I still remember the shudder when I sensed a knowing as sure as fact that I might only truly become my fullest self if I explored and stayed open to moving through daunting terrain." So this book is about growing and developing and welcoming challenges rather than turn your back and burying those challenges under the carpet, and to understand that failure or perceived failure is a pathway to mastery. So it's important, as the author says, to realise that failing is a path, is a stepping stone to getting better, but also a stepping stone to mastering the thing that you want to focus on. And when the author was young, she remembers her father sitting around the dinner table every day and basically asking the one empowering question of all of his children and his partner, his spouse. And the question was a simple one, but I think it's a question that we should all consider incorporating into our daily empowering question time, and that is, ask yourself, what have I failed at today. Because that in itself just opens up the whole concept of failure and enables you to embrace it, to use it, and to do something with it. Because the next point that the author makes is something which is really, really powerful, and I found oh so empowering and oh so profound, where she mentions that failure is not an outcome. Listen to this one here, because this is a cracker. So listen up, and this is probably the key point to come out of this book. Failure is not an outcome, but the simple result of one attempt. So it's simply the result of one attempt. So that's really, really powerful and really profound, to look at failure as not an outcome. It's not the end, it's not the outcome, but it's simply the result of one attempt. So that in itself just encourages you to want to do more and to try harder and to give it another crack. Because the next point is also a powerful one, because, and we've seen this in our lives time and time again, amateurs are more willing to take risks because their ignorance, listen to this, amateurs are more willing to take risks because their ignorance protects them from fear of failure. Whereas the proficient professional will steer clear of risk in order to maintain status and not to experience pain. Wow. So that's a powerful point. So once again, that invites us to have a go, to take risks and to not fear failure, because you just never know which attempt or what thing you try that's going to work your way and deliver the results that that others have been unable to achieve. The author then moves on to talk about a few other things, and one of the messages again is to focus on what you control, and this is a recurring theme across a number of texts that I've read over the past couple of months. You know, you can only focus on what you can control. By all means, keep an eye out for things that you can't control and learn how to surf and to maneuver and to go up, over, around and under those things. But you've got to understand that there are things that you can't control, so you just need to manage those as best you can. But there are things that you can control and you can influence that require your utmost focus and your time. Because at the end of the day, the author invites us to fail our way to success. You're not going to get there without failing. You're not going to get there because somebody's going to lay down a carpet that is going to help you get to your goal without any challenges along the way. Because endurance, consistency and persistence are requirements, are prerequisites, should I say, for success. So you need to endure, you need to persist, you need to solve the problems that are going to come in your way in order to achieve your goal. And if your goal's worth chasing, then you need to stick to it and do whatever you can. But the author also warns us, do not get tied up in perfectionism. You know, don't get tied up in perfectionism, because that will run you ragged and won't allow you to free you up to be able to try and to do things that you need to do. So the author then introduces us to a concept called the Archer's Paradox. I've never heard of this before, but the Archer's Paradox is that the realization that we can't control all of the things around us. You can't control the weather. You can't control the wind. You can't control the temperature. But what you can control is you can control the tension that you've got on your on the bow. You can control where you're pointing or where you're aiming, so that you can factor in these other elements before releasing the arrow on its way to the target. So it's all about adjusting, being flexible, and being in a position to make the most of the opportunities as and when they arise, and without being a perfectionist, waiting for things to be perfect before you can take action. It's basically all about taking action, regardless of whether or not there is perfection, and regardless of whether or not things or all the stars are aligned. And the basic thing is that we need to observe and to do our best at each attempt. Try and do our best at each attempt, and all things that are worthwhile are labours. They're labours of love anyway. So you need to work at it, and you need to experience pain, suffering, challenges, problems, and all of the things. That's all part of the show. The author also here talks about the importance of staying away from the mental and physical spaces that involve criticism, because criticism is a dampener on creativity, and it kills off risk-taking. So whatever you do, and this is a very, very important thing for all people to consider, especially young people, separate yourself as far as you can from your critics, so that you feel safe to fail and try again and again. But on the same token, be careful not to trap yourself in isolation, because isolation and perfectionism also has its challenges. There's an example that the author brings up about an artist, an artist in Florence in the 16th century named Pontormo, who spent 11 years in isolation to paint a portrait. But neither the portrait nor the painter survived the isolation. So once again, that's a little anecdote to consider about isolating yourself, especially in these days when we've got COVID-19 and all the lockdowns. Isolation is very, very dangerous for many reasons. So something to consider. So another quote that the author talks about, which is a real good one, and one that I'll be using on many occasions in future, and it's from Leonard Bernstein. And he says that you need a plan, but also not enough time in order to get things done. So let's move on to the third point here about critics. So what we mentioned before is to try and separate yourself as far as you can from people who criticise, because criticism can be very, very toxic and negative, and it doesn't help risk-taking, and it doesn't help creativity. It's a bit of a dampener on those things. But you can also use critics to better yourself. But it takes a lot of grit. So you've got to assess whether or not you've got the grit to be able to work through and get through the criticism that is everywhere around us. As my dear mother used to say, she used to say, look, don't worry about criticism, because they talk behind the king and the queen's back. So regardless of who you are, you'll get criticised, and not to worry about it. but just to bolden up, just to man up, woman up, to grit up and get through it. Because it's impossible. It's impossible to please everyone, especially if what you're trying to do is to instigate change, improvement, and cause people to take action and to exert effort. Because most people, regardless of what you think, are just bone lazy. So it's hard enough to get people to do things that are critical for their health and benefit, let alone things that they haven't been sold on as yet. So I guess what the smart person does is they use their grit, they listen to criticism, they assess it, they use it where it's relevant, and they discard it where it's damaging. So I think that's it for now. So thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. The book The Rise by Sarah Lewis is an absolute cracker, just like all the books that we cover. There are many lessons, there are many life hacks there that we can use, we can consider. So to all my friends and family, stay connected, stay relevant, stay reasonable, and let's take a couple of life hacks from this book and learn that issues, challenges, failure are all stepping stones to mastery, and you need to fail yourself to success and to welcome failure and use failure in order to achieve personal greatness. And it's through work and rework that your brain builds further images, mental images that can be saved and incorporated into your inventory of skills that you can use time and time again throughout your life. Because at the end of the day, nothing is wasted as long as you're using the right mindset and thinking that everything you do is a lesson that's going to help you along the path to growth and development. So I look forward to coming to you again tomorrow from a different location with a different message, a message of empowerment. So thank you. Yasas, Vilakya from Jim's 5am Club on this Tuesday, where the sun is starting to come through, the sky is starting to blue. So it's been a bit of a trend here in Sydney that this day starts off cloudy, overcast and raining, but come lunchtime it's blown off and the clouds and the sun starts to peep through. Yasas and take care.